Welcome to the historic town of Gleeson, Arizona. We're about 15 miles out of Tombstone. We're going to take a little tour of what remains of the town, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're off to stop number 1, the jail. Okay, before we go any further with the video, I'd like to mention the sponsor of this video. No, I don't have any sponsors. I don't have any patrons on Patreon or anything like that. But I did want to say, if you're enjoying this walking tour or just a tour around the ghost town of Gleeson, when we got to the jail, a guy came out from a Winnebago park there and said, "Hey, I'm just in the middle of finishing a meal, but if you hang out a little bit, I will give you a tour inside the museum, which is inside the jail." We didn't even know there was a museum there. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you. And the card above, link below, as usual. So now back to the tour of Gleeson. Before I tell you about the Gleeson Jail, I'd like to suggest check out Mellody's blog posting on the town of Gleeson. I'll leave a link in the description down below. Now on to the jail. It was completed in 1910 and was built entirely of reinforced concrete at the cost of $1,778. It originally had 2 cells and replaced a temporary wooden jail which had a tin roof. The concrete building originally had a single steel door in the middle which opened into an interior hallway. The hallway is now the open-air porch in the front of the building. Each cell had a barred interior door and barred windows on the side and back. Jail records indicate you could find between 2 and 8 inmates confined here on any given day, mostly for petty theft, public drunkenness, or assault. The jail was often used for the temporary confinement of prisoners who were being transported to Tombstone from the further reaches of Cochise County. One cell was also used as a secure lockup for confiscated bootleg liquor during both the Arizona Prohibition era, 1915 to 1920, and National Prohibition, 1920 to 1933. The murderer and escaped convict Luther Price was held there while being transported back to prison in 1917. The jail fell into disuse by the 1930s and was converted into a private home for a time. In 1938, the film Mysterious Rider filmed a lynch mob scene here, although the interior jail scenes were filmed elsewhere. Perhaps the most famous lawman to serve as Gleeson's constable was Deputy Wesley Woodton Cates, born in Texas, and at the age of 16, Cates joined the Texas Rangers and served under Captain Bill McDonald. After a year, in January 1894, Cates became the first and youngest city marshal of Amarillo, Texas. He later settled down with his wife in Cochise County and became constable of Gleeson in 1904. A few years after his appointment, Cates convinced the county to build a new wooden jail to replace the old oak tree. Several notable prisoners were held in the Gleeson jail. The first was a Mexican outlaw named Francisco Chavez. On the morning of September 5, 1912, Cates and the constable of Courtland, John Henry Bright, attempted to arrest Chavez after he assaulted another man, Gregorio Parrilla. Chavez resisted the deputies, armed himself with a rifle, and a minor gunfight ensued. Over 30 shots were fired, and the spectacle lasted long enough for curious townsfolk to take up positions and watch from a nearby hill. But nobody was hurt that day, and Chavez was detained. In the summer of 2008, the Gleeson Jail and the surrounding 10 acres was purchased by Tina Miller and John Wiest, who also bought an old house in town. By that time, the jail was in a deteriorated state and been heavily vandalized. Also in the 1940s, the county removed the metal gates and windows for use in the new jail in Benson, which left the front of the building exposed. Had it been built of anything other than steel and concrete, the Gleeson Jail would have likely collapsed long ago. The building was found to be structurally sound, however, and has been restored almost to its original condition.
Stop number 2.
The second stop on the tour is the Old School. The Gleeson School opened in 1918 and was a massive two-story building with an arched entryway. The bottom floor contained storerooms, while the top floor had classrooms often used for community meetings and other functions after school hours. There were as many as 4 teachers and scores of students, although the number varied greatly depending on the year. The last classes were held in 1945, and parts were removed for construction and renovation elsewhere. The wooden floors, for instance, were torn out and used to renovate Tombstone's Crystal Palace. In the description down below, I'll leave a link for a little handout from October 2010 of a walking tour of Gleeson, which will show you the map and locations and things like that. So check it out if you ever want to take a tour.
Stop number 3.
Our third stop on the tour is the Shannon Hospital. In 1906, John Gleeson sold the Copper Belle Mine to the Shannon Mining Company. By 1913, the Shannon Company was making a good profit on its operations and opened a hospital for its workers and their families. Alternatively known as Shannon Hospital or just the Gleeson Hospital, it was the only medical facility from Douglas to the south, Wilcox to the northeast, and Tombstone to the west. It treated not only mining injuries, but also the ailments of miners, ranchers, and their families. During the Spanish flu pandemic, 1918 to 1920, the Shannon Hospital was host to some who died, but also many who recovered as influenza raged throughout the area. The hospital had its own well just south of the building and was fully electrified. While mining operations continued through 1958, the hospital was in use only until the late 1930s, when the post office closed and most of Gleeson's residents moved away.
Stop 4. The Hanging Tree.
The next stop is the Jail Tree. When Gleeson began, local miscreants were locked up at the Jail Tree, which is next to the wash between the hospital and the Bono building. A cable was secured around the massive trunk of the oak, and prisoners were chained by the wrists to the cable. The jail was cleaned only when the water ran down the wash and carried away the prisoners' refuse. Passing children used to throw rocks at the prisoners. The jail tree was replaced by a temporary wooden jail in 1905 and ultimately by the concrete jail in 1910. The next stop on our tour is the Joe Bono Store. The Joe Bono building was originally built as the Gleeson outlet for Charles M. Renard, a shopkeeper with stores in Courtland and Pearce as well. Over the years, it also served as a gas station, a private home, a hotel, and a general curio shop. The major portion of its life, however, was spent as a saloon. The building is crumbling and locked now, but looking in the windows, you can see a mural painted in 1982 depicting the town of Gleeson as local residents then remembered it. The basement remnants just north of the Bono Store once supported the B.A. Taylor Warehouse, starting location of the 1912 fire, which burned most of Gleeson. Next is the Gleeson Cemetery. The Gleeson Cemetery is still maintained, the most recent burial taking place in 2008. It is the final resting place of many local characters, including Yi Wee, who ran a restaurant in Gleeson for decades, and of Eugene Yoakum, the last resident of the nearby ghost town of Courtland. Some of the graves are surrounded by fences, and one local resident recalling his grandfather's story about stumbling out of the Bono Saloon in its heyday, blind drunk, and deciding to sleep it off after securing his horse for the night in a little corral, only to find in his horror the next morning that he had penned the animal inside one of the fenced plots in the cemetery. The Gleeson Pioneer Cemetery is located west of Gleeson on the main road to Tombstone. It is estimated by APCRP there could be over 50 graves in this cemetery, but more research is needed to determine the total amount of graves in this cemetery. Many of the graves do not have headstones or markers of any type.
Stop 7.
And the last stop on the tour is the Martinez Home. The last family to live within Gleeson proper was the Martinez family. Members of this family lived in this house until 2003 and held reunions here for those who had moved elsewhere. The home was built in several stages, and inside the floors tilt in several directions. It is electrified, though there is no running water in the house. A dual outhouse stands behind the house, and for years there was a scrap metal collection in back, gathered locally by 2 Martinez men who planned on selling it to a company that used such scrap metal as a catalyst in the refining operation.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this, what they call a walking tour of Gleeson video. We did drive to between a few spots. And as usual, comment, like, subscribe, notification, thumb up, all that kind of stuff. And have yourself a blessed day.